Welcome to Exploring Curiosities with the Unbridled Woman, the podcast where curiosity knows no bounds. I am extremely excited to have my beautiful guest here today, Heather Blackmon, and she is going to just talk about her passion that I find extremely interesting and something that I really wanted to get more into. So Heather is a 500-hour yoga teacher. She specializes in creative vinyasas and sound healing. She has a focus on bringing fun into the practice and helps students improve balance, flexibility, and strength. Since her yoga journey began in 2013, Heather has explored many styles, finding her true calling in creative vinyasa, restorative yoga, and sound healing. She thoughtfully incorporates breath work into every session to enhance the overall experiences. So she offers both in-person and online classes, making it easy to practice with her from anywhere in the world. She also enjoys crafting unique yoga experiences tailored to individual goals for events, corporate settings, and private sessions. No matter where you are in your yoga journey, Heather is dedicated to supporting and guiding you in every step of the way. Well, thank you, my love. Thank you for being here.
What a great intro. Thank you. I'm happy to and excited to be here.
I would love to start off, as I do with my guests, because this is the Unbridled Woman. What does the word unbridled mean to you when you hear it?
It sounds to me like somebody who's been set free or not constrained anymore by, I don't know, whatever was maybe holding them back in the past or could be holding them back.
And I'm sure you see that a lot in your yoga classes. When someone,
definitely,
when they become almost unbridled in a pose that maybe they've been kind of working toward, or they finally find that freedom in there. Like they get that aha of like, oh, this is what it's supposed to feel like in my body. And
yeah. Well, and I love that you said feel as opposed to look, because I do think that shift is where you start to see some of that unbridledness or that release, right? Where it's less about what does this look like and more about what does it feel like, which to me is always more of a priority, just to help you feel things in your body, which is going to be way more helpful than trying to replicate something you see on Instagram.
Oh, yes. Because that could be so, I know for me that was extremely intimidating. Even being in some classes where, some people more advanced and, wanting to be that person, but, but that was the journey of a yoga practice anyways for me, was to accept the present moment where I am and then embody that there. And then, if that maybe someday I can get there, maybe not, it's okay, but as long as the word feel, right? As long as I'm feeling good in my body. And so we're going to have a lot of juicy things to talk about, I'm sure. So, but first of all, I am always interested, always curious, because in my experience, when my guests come on, what they're offering in this world comes out of their unbridled story of something that they experienced, and now they're offering this out because it had most likely helped them, and or it's something that they found that I want to guide people more deeply into. So if you would want to share your story, I would love to hear it.
Absolutely. So when it comes to kind of my yoga practice, I'm one of those people who definitely practice on and off for a really long time since college. So 20 plus years ago, I'm somebody who's been more of an endurance focused athlete. So I was a runner, triathlete. I'm a mountain biker now. So that type of stuff has always appealed to me. Yoga is one of those things that always seemed like the thing you were supposed to do, right? And you hear this from so many people. I should do more yoga, or I probably should. Tried it over the years, and to be perfectly honest, from my first 3 yoga classes, I thought this isn't for me. It just was really repetitive and I was bored, and I went, I'm just not the person who's ever going to do that. And then you try again, right? Because there's so many different types of yoga. You don't know that to begin with. And where I started to find different styles that worked really well to complement all the endurance stuff that I was doing, I started to kind of maybe get a peek into, okay, I'm understanding why people say they should do this. It does feel like it's maybe a balance to all the super active things that I'm doing in other areas. So, but I still was that dabbler, right? I was the person who would sometimes show up to class and then 3 weeks later, I'd be like, oh, shoot, I still haven't gone. I'm going to go twice this week. And then I'd be gone for another 3 weeks. And, you pop in and out. And so my experience at that point was that all this stuff people said they felt in yoga just wasn't what I was going to get out of it. I never
Mhm.
felt those things. And it was literally only when I had a friend who opened a yoga studio and I started to go consistently to support her that I started to actually feel those benefits. And I realized, okay, so you can't just do this every once in a while and expect to feel all those nice benefits, right? The balance to my mountain biking, actually starting to feel less sore, starting to be able to calm my mind. It's only when I'd started to go consistently, and not even for myself, just trying to be nice, that I went, aha,
Ah.
okay, now I see where this comes into play, and I can see where I can start to feel all those benefits. So maybe the unbridled side of this is I left the corporate world. I was a marketing executive for quite a while in 2021 and said, well, this seems like a good time to run away to the jungle in Peru and get my yoga teacher training, right? So I did, came back, started to teach pretty quickly and realized that my experience, I actually also coached endurance for a while. My experience coaching and learning about your body from an endurance perspective. I actually did personal training for a while as well. Okay, from personal training and knowing how the body moves and where strength is, and from yoga, if I put all these things together, like we can really start to create something that's pretty impressive and something we can start to help everyone else see those benefits from creating a consistent practice. So not what people expected me to do. I'm not like that typical yoga teacher who maybe, could do all the fancy poses and then decided to teach. I just wanted to learn more about it and then realized how it fit into all the stuff I have been learning and that I could help other people then feel these benefits more deeply in their own bodies.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you said a lot. I said a lot there, and I can see that because yoga is even endurance, I think,
Yeah.
because I've run and done marathons. It is a lifestyle in a way,
Yeah, that's a great point.
and yoga is also, and we don't truly benefit from either endurance or more yoga or stretching or mindfulness unless we do that more often. It's not just something you can do once and get the full benefits of. And it's also one of those things, just like running and things like, yeah, I don't know about you, but the first few times I ran, I didn't like it. It hurt,
Agreed.
but there was something in me that wanted to get better at it. There, I had a goal, like I wanted to do, a 10K or something, and I think yoga is also like that too, because let's just talk a little bit more about that. Like goals in yoga. What can motivate people to want to keep doing this?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. I actually have a resource I call the Yoga Hacks for Getting Consistent. And finding a goal is one of the things I talk about in there, which is not something you hear about in yoga as
Right.
much for some reason. But for someone who's like me or like type A, or you're goal driven, I think there's so many different goals you can have that make it easier, because when you can kind of see I'm working towards this destination, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you don't feel like doing it, you have a reason to still get on your mat, either for a breathwork practice or a movement practice or whatever else it would be. So goals could look like, okay, that cool pose you saw on Instagram. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that, right? Like I have been working on like nailing my forearm stand or Pinchamayurasana for a while, or my handstand, right? Those are cool things that for me are going to take quite a while to work towards, which I love. Because if it's easy, it doesn't have that same payoff for me.
Right.
And so it's not something that's going to drive me to do it when I'm not in the mood. So I think goals like that can be super helpful. For other people, I think it's just a goal to be able to be like sit with themselves a bit more, which
Mm.
can be really hard. Like, have you ever just tried to like sit in silence for like 30 seconds? Which when you say 30 seconds sounds really short. And then you're like, oh my gosh, how are we only at 3?
Right.
Okay, it's only been 10. Like how like it takes so long. So regardless of whether that goal is that mental, like how do I slow my brain down and be able to sit with myself for 30 seconds, or to learn that super cool posture that you just think would be fun. I think both of those can be really motivating, because now you know why you want to practice, like what's the thing that you're going to be moving towards. And then just like we would when you're training for a marathon, you can almost put together a plan, right? That says, and here's how I'm going to get there. And that feels a lot more tangible for many of us than I'm just going to practice when I have time, because
Right.
you create, now you can create some structure around it. And structure is super helpful for a lot of us. Even though we say we want all this freedom, I find that freedom works best when you have a little bit of structure to work within, at least for my brain. So,
Oh yeah, yes, yes. I just got goosebumps when you said that because I think you just described the balance of our masculine and feminine in us.
yes,
And I think,
absolutely.
and I think, and I think yoga does that because
Hmm.
there is that discipline that you need. You know, there are certain benefits of holding. I know you do a lot more of vinyasa, but sometimes holding warrior
Yeah.
one or two and just being with that and that, but then it also the flow that comes from that as well. Like
Hmm.
the feeling in your body of like, oh, I can sense my muscles just moving one way, and especially the feeling the breath move through the body. It's a beautiful connection, and
Absolutely.
it takes time. It takes time and dedication and practice, and that's why it's called a practice.
Yeah, there's no destination. And I will say, I also teach Rocket. It's a newer to me style of yoga that I
Hmm.
just kind of discovered in the last, I guess it's almost, I think it's been about a year now. But with that, that comes down that Ashtanga lineage. So you do hold postures a little bit longer. It will typically attract somebody who enjoys doing the crazy poses. And as much as I will think like, oh, I can do this cool thing now, it's neat in Rocket to look around and go, and that person just did something I didn't even think was physically possible. That motivation as well, where you're like, wow, there's a whole other level. So I love that about yoga because it can be just as challenging to do that warrior two, like you said, then to get to a handstand, then to get to some other, absolutely
Hmm.
bonkers thing. There's always a new layer or new level. And I think the challenge with that is enjoying the space that you're in right now and not letting them get too focused on the future and where you want to get to. But the beauty in that is knowing that it doesn't ever end. It is a practice and it's something that will grow with you over your life. You don't cross the finish line at some point. There's always another layer that you can explore and see what that feels like for you.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And such a great metaphor and training for life.
Yes, absolutely.
Because
Yeah, we don't just stop one day, right?
yes, yes. I mean, it's not, we feel like, oh, I have a destination somewhere in my life where I want to be, but if we really truly sit back, like we don't really have any control over all of that, but what we do have is right now and what you are experiencing in this moment and finding the beauty in that, the acceptance and the gratitude. So yeah, I love that. A few years ago, I went through my teacher training and
Mhm.
it wasn't so much to teach. So you said I wanted to go just a little bit because I had done massage for so long. I'm like, how can I maybe move this into working with some of my clients? And yeah, I just absolutely loved it because from my point of view of like anatomy,
Mhm.
like where one of the trainings was just even the breakdown of just like one pose, just say
Yeah.
like warrior one, like breaking down all the muscular movement in that, which you don't think. You're just like, okay, just step, I raise my arms, I look up, it's like,
Yeah.
but when you break down all the muscles that are involved in there and getting them into that right alignment, and
Yeah.
actually being able to feel what the right alignment is in your body is for me was like, whoa, it just blew my mind. It gave me a deeper love for yoga
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
how it can affect us. Not only it was affecting my body and also my mind of it's like my body is just amazing that it can do all of this. All this is going on right now in just this simple pose. And it was a very, a moment that was very big, present, like it just, not, it almost time stopped in a way.
And I think it's so interesting, right? A lot of people, I think, go to teacher training who don't intend to teach. And I actually have a yoga accelerator course that kind of bridges that gap to get to exactly what you said. When you start to learn the why behind a pose and you can break it down into its components, you get that richer understanding, right? And
Mm-hmm.
you start to be able to feel it in your body. And I have an interesting relationship with alignment because I think it's helpful to know what the traditional alignment is, but I think it's more helpful than to say, and so how do I get to that intent of this pose in a way that fits my body. Because a lot
Hmm.
of these postures were created for 14-year-old boys. Not a 14-year-old boy. I have different anatomy that may, limit some of those things. And
Right.
so start right. So starting to kind of be able to learn and explore those poses and say, okay, well, how could I get into this in a way that helps to respect the spirit of it, but maybe isn't as like strictly into the alignment must be X and more about how do I get to that intention and feel this into a way that feels even better? That's one thing I love to work with students because it then starts to open doors where they thought it can't do X, where it really is. You can totally do that. We just need to figure out how to adjust this for your own body. And the more
Yeah.
you learn that so that you can do that for yourself, I think is like way more powerful than just hearing it from an external source, right? The teacher telling you, "Hey, try this." It's like you get to feel it so much better as you start to learn.
Yeah. Yeah. And it brings back a sense of agency to the
Yes.
person too, right? I mean, it's,
Perfect word. That was exactly it. Yes.
yeah. And again, creating that in your life, creating those boundaries, understanding, because you're absolutely right. I mean, those poses, they have a certain, they you try to make you safe, but but sometimes, you can't bend your knee. Your knee will actually maybe go over and over you won't be able to see your ankle or something. I don't know. Or maybe your foot can't pivot all the way, in and has to stay straight or, it's like, it's okay because that's your body and that's the acceptance. Like, this is my body. And I love what you said. I can go and do these other things. I can go do it, but I did it. It's like a song. I did it my way, right? I
Yes,
did it
yes,
my way.
yes, yes. I love that. Well, and even like you said, the knee over the toe, that's a normal, healthy movement. So I think a lot of these things that have been passed down through yoga lineage, it's okay to ask why, right? And so coming from the fact that I do have personal training experience, that's a normal squat move. In fact, in malasana or yogi squat, your knees over your toes as well, most often. So
Right.
some of these rules, it's good to learn to question. Take that off the mat. Sometimes it's good to question in your everyday life. Why am I doing it this way? Is there a different way I could try this? And so again, you're learning those skills on the mat, right? That
Mm-hmm.
then you get to take off the mat. And so when I talk about going deeper in your practice, it is because you then get to take some of that experience in a really safe environment in the context of yoga, which is super powerful. But then you're learning to take that and use it in the next board meeting that you're in, right? Or the next with your
Yes.
kids in an argument. Or like there's so many places that you can just like pause and take a step back and say, tell me more about that. Or like why? Why is that the way we need to do this? And see like
Mm-hmm.
is that like does that create conversation and growth in your life?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's profound wisdom because especially like nowadays, I think
Yep.
we need to question things, and not just take things for granted and get a better understanding of, okay, why do you want me to do this? Or yeah,
Totally.
just,
And learning to do that in a respectful way is something that's hard, I think, in this day and age too. And as we start to think about some of the deeper concepts of yoga, for example, within the yamas, which are a lot of those guidelines for life that we learn, you have truth telling, right? Which is our satya, which says we want to be able to tell the truth, but doing it with kindness, right? The
mm-hmm.
nonviolence. And so, like, again, how do we take some of these yogic principles and learn how can you actually apply them to your life in a way that doesn't feel super overwhelming, but like you just said, like how do I can then have that conversation in a calmer, right? None of this
Calmer.
stuff is magic, calmer um,
Right. Yes.
way that allows us to have more constructive conversations versus like the shouting matches that stuff can get to pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's just imagine the other person in their yoga attire at class. You're going to speak to them.
Exactly. I like that.
So what type of breath work do you bring into your asas and
Yeah. So pranayama to me is the way we always start and a
hmm,
full length class. So if we're teaching in a typical 60-minute format, even in a 45-minute format, we've got plenty of time. And so depending on what the practice is, such a great way to kind of bring us into the space, bring you into being present. We talked about earlier, sitting for 30 seconds quietly, really hard. If we're actually working on counting our breath up and down. And so now you have a job for your brain. We're going to count in for a count of four, and you're going to count out for a count of four. That's way easier. Like just that little bit of a job for your brain to focus on. Now I can sit And so I'm counting, but I'm also like focused on one thing, and that is my breath. And that makes it much easier to get present and
Hmm.
grounded into this space. So that's why I love to teach pranayama, which is again one of kind of, if you think about the 8 limbs of yoga, asana is one of them, and pranayama is another one. And so integrating those together, I think fits so seamlessly. And we usually typically circle back at the end to kind of go out. Now, when I teach shorter format classes for my virtual studio, the big thing I hear from people for practicing at home is like, I kind of want it to be fast. So if
Hmm.
the class is 10 minutes or 30 minutes, probably not going to have a whole lot. In a 30-minute, I can usually get us a little bit of breath work. But so it just depends how much space we have. But breath work you can do when you wake up in the middle of the night, right? So if you start to learn these practices and you're trying to calm yourself back down, turn off the brain,
Right.
count. It can be a
Hmm.
really great way to be able to shut the brain back off and help you fall back asleep, as an example. So it's a really great thing that you can do anywhere you are, right? You don't have to move your body. No one even has to know that you're actually doing a breath work practice, right? So you can keep your eyes open. And if we came back to just that simple count of 4 in and out, like you would have no idea that I was
Right.
practicing that, but you could be calming yourself back down, recentering, getting a little bit more into our parasympathetic nervous system versus our sympathetic nervous system. So super powerful practice. Breath work is everywhere now, and they're typically pulling it out of the yogic tradition of pranayama, which is pretty cool. So know that there's a ton of scientific studies that have been done around it. So it's another really great practice from yoga that you can take everywhere.
I'm glad you you emphasized that where you can do it anywhere, especially just that counting, because as you were talking, I was doing that.
Yeah, right.
And it's such a beautiful gift to do, as we were just discussing, if before you respond to somebody about anything, or I can just imagine, sitting in the boardroom and your boss says something that's so idiotic, and you're just like, all right. I'm breathing in one, and then you can, then respond from that place, or maybe by that time you don't really want to respond because you just calmed yourself down, and then it just didn't really matter.
Totally. It's a great way to go from the reactive, right? Where like a lot of our logical sense goes away, right? We're just reacting like, oh crap, how did that slip out of my mouth? To give
You're
you time
right.
to think about it. I love that. That's a great example. Absolutely.
So I know we touched upon, I think not directly, but maybe getting a little bit more. You told about your journey, how you used to like just go into classes, and
Yeah.
is there anything more you want to emphasize? Why do like just kind of these drop-in classes suck, basically, and what do you want to do instead?
Absolutely. And this is maybe one of those hot takes, but I bet when I explain it, people are going to go, oh, that does make sense. So this is definitely me putting my endurance coaching hat on for a second, or even personal training. We know when we want to get better at something, there's like a progression to that, right? Like we start with like really getting great, the basic foundational moves. And if it's this is running, right, we want to make sure our running gait is nice and clean. So we're not doing something that's going to cause a problem. In yoga, it's just making sure we know those foundational poses so we can build on them. Problem with drop-in classes, and I teach them, right? So this is just, I don't have a solution for drop-in classes, but just know that when you're going, it's an awkward situation for the teacher as well. We don't know who's going to be there, right? You're probably not in the same class every single week. You may be even going to different teachers every week. So being able to create that progression where we're starting with layer one and then we're adding on to it class by class, it's just not possible. So
Yeah.
if you're just going to drop in classes and you're going, man, I'm never getting better at this pose, I thought, probably not working on the pieces of the pose each time, right? Like you're probably, every class is different. So this is not the fault of the teacher. It's not the fault of the student. It's just the nature of a typical drop-in class. They're still fun.
Right.
Maybe if your goal, like we talked about earlier, is to start to see progress, so that you feel like you're getting stronger, that you're improving your balance, that you're able to maybe build to a pose that you think is interesting, probably not the best way to get there.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of ways that you can change this. So, looking to create that structure in your practice. I think a home practice is a really great way to do this. So, maybe you're taking what you learn from your yoga teacher and then you're practicing at home. So, if you learned a drill for learning crow, for example, you're not waiting until the next class. You're actually doing that, every
Hmm.
day for 5 minutes and you're just trying to build up to it. That can be really awesome. I think depending on your level of motivation and self dedication, that can totally work. think for a lot of people, having a bit more structure into that, where you're actually in a program that's walking you through that, just like you would be with a personal trainer, right? Or in a marathon
Right.
training program or any of those things, looking for a system that does help you to build week over week, day over day, whatever it might be, I think shortcuts that process even more. So if you're like looking for that progress, like finding a solution like that. This is what we do in my accelerator program so that you have that week over week progression. I think then you're going to like supercharge your results or something like that, right? It's way
True.
better than the
Yeah.
drop in methodology. I don't know your experience. I mean, did you find great progress from drop in classes?
Well, I usually, when I was very good at going, it was 3 times a week and it was usually with the same teacher.
That is the ideal, right? So if you can go
Yeah.
to the same teacher all the time, and if that teacher is knowing you're going to be there, that's at yoga series, you'll see this a lot of times. Like if you sign up for somebody for like a 6 week yoga series with the same teacher, that totally like it's not a drop-in class anymore, right? Like they know you're going to be there and they
Exactly.
can build it out.
Yes.
Yep.
And they get to know you, right?
Yes.
So, I appreciate, when the teacher comes around and maybe suggests this, but
Yeah.
if they know you, they'll know that this is me in this pose. Like,
Yeah,
like we were
totally.
talking about, like this is how my body looks in this pose. That's just what it's going to be. So like any tweaking, it's not going to help me, might even hurt me in a way. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I definitely, yeah, for me, it was definitely finding just, the teacher that I really felt connected to and just staying within their schedule. And I also though found like if it wasn't a specific thing I was looking for, I guess, because
Yeah,
I think even sometimes when you're starting out, you might just want to you like, I just want to get out of my head. I just want to take some time and just get out of my head. So I guess, and you could let me know, like for that,
yeah.
it just experiment because you're just, because most classes, that's what they're going to do, whether it's through some breath work
Absolutely.
or meditation and some asanas, it's going to get you out of your head for that amount of times.
So that's just like going for a fun jog, right?
Yes.
We're not working towards the race, right? We're going to run to get some energy out and to move some things. Nothing wrong with that, right? And I think
Exactly.
drop-in classes are fantastic for that. It's really more when you're trying to see progress, or if you're
Mm-hmm.
somebody who's like, I just don't feel like I'm ever getting better at. That's when I think drop-in's probably not the right use for that. Again, I teach drop-in classes. I'm not knocking them, but there is a time and a place.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes people think I'm just going to get better by going to the random class, and that doesn't work in quite the same way. So I think using them for the right purpose is great. I have, and also depending on your style, right? So an Ashtanga class or a rocket yoga class, there is structure built in, right? Ashtanga is the exact same sequence every time. Rocket has a similar thread. So in a class like that, your drop-in it is structured already. Like that
True.
creation of
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna do these same poses, you will build up over time. So I think just knowing again, what type of class is this? Is this helping to work you towards what you're looking to accomplish? Getting out of your head, pick any of them. Oh my goodness, that is like such a great way. Actually, let me take that back. I don't think I would pick a restorative class to get out of your head because you're sitting in something for a lot longer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Probably in your head just a tiny bit more. Count. That helps me in restorative. If you can't turn the brain off, count. But I think it's just knowing what the purpose is and then choosing that class intentionally and knowing when maybe a more structured approach or a more structured style might serve you better.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yes, thank you. My memory, I love restorative yoga because it feels so comfy. Like I feel so taken care of in a class like that because with the bolsters and the pillows.
Yes. All the props, right? All the props.
Yes.
I love that. Yeah,
Yes.
agreed. Hey, you can do this at home without all the props, right? You grab a pillow instead of your bolster. You can grab books for your blocks. It's really easy. Like grab a scarf for a strap. There's lots of ways that you can do all of this at home as
Mm-hmm.
well. Because to your point, like that is the most delicious thing when you just need to like sink in. Maybe you just need to stretch out a little bit more and allow gravity to kind of just allow you to sink in. It's
Yeah.
very, very lovely. I love restorative classes. I also know for some people, they're the hardest classes, right? So the people who are type A, so I'm calling myself out. Sometimes type A people have a hard time slowing down. And so I'll hear people say, oh, that's just like advanced napping. I've had one
Oh,
of my friends say that before. And I'm like, "Yeah, that's probably yoga nidra, but it is slower and slow is hard. And so sometimes that's the thing you need to lean
yes.
into as well, right?
Hmm.
Like, how do you learn to slow down? And and then we know that this is a challenging thing. It's something you can work on. So 10-minute restorative to start maybe, and then you can work up to a full class if it's something that you're like, there's no way I could do that. You can. You just have to
Yeah,
work on it.
that's such a good point. That's such a good point. And perhaps, perhaps yoga is that. It's the moving, because how many have your experience? And I've seen when I used to go, especially like in hot yoga or power yoga,
Mhm.
it's always the type A's that are in there.
Yes,
Because
yes,
this is, because they want to sweat, and then, the challenge, right, is to do something totally different than what
yes.
you are comfortable doing, because
Yeah,
that's where you're going to grow, right? I mean,
100% agree. Yeah. I
yeah.
think it can also be going back to your motivation question, right? This is also a way to prevent boredom. So if you are the type A person who's been going to vinyasa or one of the more up tempo energetic practices, and you're starting to feel like I'm getting a little bit bored, restorative is a great way to like mix that up, right?
Mm,
And just try something different. And to your point, probably really good for you as well, because it's probably something you don't take the time to do. And so sometimes having a class structure, right? Or someone to guide you through it, you don't have a choice. Now you're in there, right? Like, and so it forces
right.
you to slow down. And that might be exactly what you need. Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And going to back your point when, if just having someone work with you through this is like, with a personal trainer, when you are training, like maybe, we can relate to the running and stuff,
Yeah.
or even your triathlons. I mean, I've done some
Mhm.
triathlons, right? And was not my, I mean, I can swim, but with a bunch of people, no.
Yeah, it's a lot.
So when that came up on my training thing to go and swim, it's like, I don't want to. I'd want to go, but you have to do it because it's part of it, right? So, you're looking at your schedule. That's, that, someone like you have working with your client, like restorative. Oh no, like, like, no, I need to burn off all this energy. It's like, well, no, but today's restorative. So this is what you have to do.
Yeah, it's a balance, right? Like, how
Yeah.
do you find, it's the yin and the yang you might think of sometimes, right? And yin is another softer, well, yin is a softer style that's a little bit more challenging, right? Because you're not using as many props and you're really sinking in and you're holding it for a really long time. Different kind of nice, slow challenge. Restorative, all the support, we're not necessarily getting to that same edge. There's so many styles of yoga. I think I was counting this the other day, and there's at least 15 that I think are
Mm-hmm.
pretty well known. And I know there's way more than that. So if
Mm-hmm.
you don't like one of these styles, there's probably another one. Little tangent.
Right.
But I think you're right. Like, it's good then for someone to say it's time for you to slow down. And so if you're a calendar person, if you're a structure person, if you're a type A person, maybe if you put on your calendar, I must do restorative for 10 minutes once a week, maybe that helps you do that. And then you could see, how does your body feel after doing that for like a month? Does that
Yeah.
make any difference? It's an experiment, right? You get to be the scientist who figures out what that
Mm-hmm.
formula is for you.
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely. Absolutely. And so do you think, having structure of some sort can put off that starting and restarting thing with the yoga
Yes,
practice?
I definitely do. I would also say starting really small is another way to put off the starting and restarting. So I
Hmm.
think a lot of times the reason that we do that, and everyone's done it, and if it's not in yoga, you've done it in something else, right? Where
Right.
you start the thing and you do it again. And then when you're constantly restarting, you're like resetting every time. And so you're losing all of that progress that you really want. And quite often it means we're overcommitting and we're getting a little burned out, right? So we have
Hmm.
this thought in our head, okay, I heard somewhere that I was supposed to practice yoga every day. And so I'm going to practice yoga every day for 60 minutes. And if you weren't doing anything before, good Lord, how are you going to do that? I don't
That's a
even know.
lot. Yes.
Yeah. Like, I don't even know where you find that time. Like, you didn't like build up to it. You're just doing it. And then you're probably super sore, depending on what style you chose. And that's like 7 hours out of your week, which shouldn't be that much, but we're all pretty busy. So squeezing that in is hard. And so a lot of times it is that we overcommitted. And maybe it wasn't 6 days a week, but you picked some big number and you just tried to go. I encourage people, maybe make that smaller. I like to
Mhm.
say, figure out how many days do you want to practice? And maybe in your head, you're like, yeah, I'd love to practice 4 days a week. Awesome. How many days are you practicing now? And if the answer to that is, well, I'm practicing 2 days a week, what I would tell somebody is, well, add one more. Don't add two more to get to that four. We'll get there, but let's add one more. And it doesn't have to be 60 minutes. It could be 10, right? Just add one more practice and
Mhm.
do that for like the next 4 to 6 weeks. And if that still feels good and you still want to practice 4 days a week, then add the fourth day. Because what we're doing is we're reinforcing that you can make a commitment with yourself.
Mm.
We're training ourselves that we do keep our own commitments. Versus if you went straight to that like ultimate goal and you jumped way up, it's easy to miss and then miss again and then miss again. And then the story in our head is, well, I'm just not good at keeping these kinds of plans. I'm not good at
Mhm.
practicing yoga. I'm not good. And that's a story. It's not real. You set a really lofty goal and life happens. So, like setting the smaller goal. And
I
by the
love
way,
that
if you said you wanted to do it 4 days a week and you're doing zero, then do one.
one.
Like one more than you're doing right now. So I'm a big advocate for starting really small. And then it doesn't mean that a year from now or even 4 months from now that you're not doing all of it. But I think smaller means we get to build that habit. And then you feel successful. And then you want to keep doing it. Don't make it something you feel guilty about. Make it
Yes.
something that is serving you. So yeah, that's kind of how
Yeah.
I would think about that.
That is so great advice. And I'm taking that in because I am just today kind of scheduling out my workout next week. I want to do more weight training, but I also
Yeah.
want to incorporate it with my cardio.
Hmm.
So I'm like, well, I need to do a little, maybe do it, twice a week, and I'll bookend it Monday and, when I'm my running days. But I'm going to have to get up probably a half hour earlier to do both of these things now
Absolutely. Yeah.
so that's why I decided as you were speaking, but because before this morning, I was like, I'm going to do it 3 days a week. And then I'm thinking
Awesome.
probably won't be feasible. I'm probably going to be kind of really tired getting up extra half hour earlier every day and basically
Yeah.
having two workouts. So let me
Hmm.
try the two Monday and Fridays and see how that is. And I can always add the one in on Wednesday. So
Exactly. No, I think that's perfect because then you're going to feel really successful, right? You're going to figure out how does it work for
yeah.
you to get up earlier without this being such a big jump. And then you're going to be fine adding a third one if you decide you want to down the road. And you already have built up, okay, I'm really good at this. I can do this. I know I can add one more, which is so important, right? The mental aspect of almost everything we do is kind of the most important part, and we skip it sometimes. So,
Yeah, no, it's wonderful having these big goals, but they need to be
yeah.
broken down. And it's just like,
Yes.
I mean, how many people have always said, I want to write a book.
Hmm.
Like, I'm going to sit down today and write a book. Like, you can't do that. Like, it's
That's
like,
huge.
right. It's like, maybe, or that's but now first you have to have an outline. Like maybe
Yeah.
one day you start an outline
Hmm.
and then there's a chapter and then there's another
Right.
chapter, right? So, and eventually all that comes together and creates that book, but you just can't
Mhm.
sit down and write a book,
Yeah, that's
in
an
my experience.
overwhelming.
Yes.
I agree with you. It's like an overwhelming thing where now all of a sudden there's no way. But I love that. Yeah. Break that down into small steps. The small steps you can do one at a time. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So where do you see, your practice, your work going? Now you're doing both in person and online.
Mhm.
Anything, what's coming in the future? Do you have like
Yeah.
other aspirations coming or?
Absolutely. So I have been looking at how I can help more and more people with their yoga practice and maybe taking some of these different approaches that we have been talking about today. So I do have a virtual yoga studio. And I like to tell people, me, the perfect mix is if you're going to classes in studio and a class at home. And the reason I like both is because life happens. And so you just missed your 3 o'clock class because like something threw you off. And instead of skipping that class, if you also have a home practice, well,
Mm-hmm.
you just move it around, right? Now I'm just going to practice at home today. This happened to me on Monday. Like Monday, I have a rocket class I love to go to. It is 40 minutes away, so it's a little bit of an investment in time. And throughout the day, my list got longer and longer, right? So, but I didn't cancel my practice. I just practiced at home instead of going to that studio class. And then I'll be back to the studio next Monday.
Right.
So I think having a virtual studio as well as an in-person studio to me is like super magical because then you get the community aspect, somebody who's there
Mm-hmm.
in the room for you, as well as you start to take agency. I'm going to use your word over your own practice that now it's much easier for me to do regardless of whatever's going on. So I'd love to continue to see that virtual studio community grow because it does give you that flexibility. And I've got classes from 10 minutes to 75 in there to help it be, you can pick what works for you that day. The other thing that I love because of that progression we just talked about is I am currently working with the first group through my yoga accelerator program. And so taking all the stuff that I know from endurance training, from personal training, and from yoga, how do we create a progression across 12 weeks where we are building week over week and you are able to start to see that where we're starting with the foundations, regardless of how experienced you are, you can learn so much by like taking a step back and like,
Yeah.
let's refine our sun salutations
Hmm.
so that 12 weeks from now we can play with handstand and have built the tools along the way that make it something we can explore. Doesn't mean you have to, like, you're probably not going to get handstand in 12 weeks. Some people do. That's not my experience. But
Yes.
that you can feel confident that you're learning the tools, right, to be able to advance your practice. On top of that, looking at this a bit more holistically, where we're going deeper. And so we're also exploring the 8 limbs of yoga. So we're talking about
Mm,
what is the background of asana in like yogic history and those 8 limbs of yoga. Where does pranayama fit in? Can we learn about the yamas, like we were talking about earlier,
you're right.
ahimsa and satya, and how is that even practical for our real life? And it totally is. We talked about this, right? How do we say truthful things, but with kindness? These are yogic principles. And so that is my signature 12-week program. The next one is going to launch and it'll start in the middle of September. I'm going to launch it again or open it for registration in towards the middle or end of August. So lots of fun
Nice.
things coming down. I think I want to just create a environment where people are excited to learn, that they're having fun with their practice, but that we get to see lots of different aspects of it, right? Because it is something with so many layers and that you could learn something new every day for the rest of your life. And I think that's a really cool thing about yoga.
Yes. Yes. It is. It's something you can do for the rest of your life. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It nourishes the mind as you're learning, especially with, you say more the teachings and
Mhm.
how can you actually apply this to life that you're living? And
Yes.
and the body gets to be nourished through the movements and how that movements move the blood and oxygen and the muscles and it's like to me, yoga is like like an inner massage in a way for everything. Cause in
I
your
love
organs
that.
too,
Yeah.
right? Your organs, when you're doing twists, you're helping your digestive system and, you know, helping to detoxify. So it's if you can get through the mental things sometimes of as what we discussed here, like I can't
Right.
do this or it's not possible, then it's a huge gift to give yourself to come into this practice.
Absolutely. And like we said, you don't have to practice 6 days a week for an hour.
No, no, no,
That
no.
much smaller spaces make this fit into your life. Whether you're a runner or a triathlete or a mountain biker like me, like these are those small pockets that you fit in and help to create a well-rounded lifestyle. So then hopefully you can be doing all of these things until you're 100, right? Or
Yes.
however long you want to be doing it. Like that, I think yoga is such a great complement to allow that to be a reasonable goal. That's
Hmm.
what I want to be doing. So
Well, thank you for being such a great teacher and role model for people too. And I love that you're offering it online as well. So people can have their home practice, not get rid of their in person. Just like you said, if, something comes up and then suddenly they don't have to like, oh, I missed it, blah, blah, blah. The story's like, oh, I have my home practice,
yes.
and I have these other, I can put on as online class and get what my body needs right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We're just getting rid of those excuses so that you can actually feel fulfilled and enjoy your practice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love that. I love that. Well, in our last few minutes together, I'm going to pick a fun question that we're going
All
to get
right.
curious. Okay. Let's see. Oh, here's one. Why do you think we have a sense of humor?
Ooh, oh, I love this question. Okay. I tend to look at things as balance, right? So I think we have a sense of humor because we also have heavy, hard stuff that we have to deal with. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think having that sense of humor allows us to find that lightness in something so that we are better able to kind of work through and deal with the heaviness of the other things. So
Mm.
I think that balance, and I think you got to have both or you don't appreciate either one. You learn lessons that progress you through the challenges. So if you have that sense of humor, maybe you can also laugh about it one day, and then it also help and like lightens it up so that you can get through those tough things. So yeah, it's the yin and the yang, that balance.
Yeah, perfect. What a perfect question. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's I feel the same way. It's because if we can get into more of a lighter mood, either just from my speaking from me, my personal is, I can think better.
Yeah.
It takes what we mentioned before, that it takes that reactivity away. I think
Hmm.
the humor or the lightness, and it's almost like this. Because I think when we laugh, we actually breathe, right?
Yes.
We
Oh,
have
that
to.
is a great point. Yeah,
Because I just did, like
absolutely.
I had to actually inhale as I was laughing, so it
Yeah.
calms our nervous system. So maybe that's what it is. It's also brings us into more of the parasympathetic.
Parasympathetic. Absolutely. Oh my, I never even thought of that, but I think you've got something there. That makes a lot of sense to me. I
Uh,
love that.
well, there is laughter yoga, right? I think
I,
one time I took that. I took that one time in a park, and it was the most ridiculous thing, but it was so fun because apparently your mind doesn't know, can't distinguish between what you actually think is funny and your laugh. Like if you laugh, your mind
oh,
thinks you're happy, and even though nothing really made you laugh, in quotations, like
yeah.
you didn't hear a joke, you didn't, it was, you just started to laugh, and your body just responds to that, and just like we said,
Oh my
that
gosh, I love that.
parasympathetic,
See, so many different types of yoga. I didn't
right.
even think laughter yoga. I'm gonna need to find this. It sounds fantastic. I love it.
Let's bring that to your next in-person class. We're going to
All
laugh
right.
for 5 minutes.
Oh my gosh, everybody would stare at me, right? But I bet they would do it. And then if it really like if it works, this is an amazing thing. I think it sounds great.
Yeah, you probably, yeah, you'd be laughing by yourself for a little while, but as long as you're not uncomfortable with that, people start to chime in.
Actually, people would have to do it, right?
Laughter is
Try that next
contagious, like a
time.
yawn,
Right.
yeah,
Yes.
they would just start
I love
giggling and
that.
they wouldn't even know why. And then everybody be laughing. So,
Well, that's my takeaway. We're gonna try laughter yoga. I love it.
all right. So Heather, I know when I put this show out, I'll put all your contact in, but if you just want to say it out here, put
Yeah,
it out there where people can look at you and contact you.
absolutely. So you can find me on Instagram. That's where I normally hang out. And so you'll find me at the Heather Blackmon. My last name's tricky. It's like the color black and then MON. That's where you'll find me there. And you'll also then see a link on there for a free 12 yoga hacks to get consistent. So we talked about a couple of those hacks. There's a bunch more. It's a free resource. I just want to help you get on your mat a little bit more and feel better. You can also find a 7-day free trial to my the Fit Aspire yoga studio, my online yoga studio, if that's something you'd like to see how it feels in your practice.
Love it. Love it. Well, thank you so much. I loved having you on here. You shared so much wisdom and such a joy. And it's like, you are just the epitome of a yoga practice. You're just a bright light. So I can see
Oh,
it in your
wonderful.
face and what you emanate. So it's been a pleasure. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I love this conversation. This went really fast. I can't believe that we're already done.
I know. I know. Well, we'll keep in touch, and thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.